I want to talk about political correctness and being woke. Now, these two terms are ones that I found to be fascinating while exploring the world, this culture that our nation is in right now. And it was relevant, I guess, when I was 18, and it's relevant now in 2020. And if you are not that familiar with these terms, if you're not familiar with the political news and this culture we have in our society right now, I'm a great person to explain it because I'm kind of learning, but in terms of these terms, I understand them fully. So we'll start with political correctness. And for me, this was a term that my friend actually taught to me when I was about 18. It's called PC as well. And it's the idea that when you speak in especially a public platform, you have a large audience, you have to think about who you might offend. And so this will go back to say don't use the word FAG because it's might offend gay people. Do not use the N word. Do not use I guess words like sweetheart when referring to women. Do not make fun of cripples. Do not make fun of mentally retarded people. Actually, there's this idea that using the term mentally retarded is offensive. I would also argue that that is literally what it is. Mental retardation is retard. It's an Italian word, I believe, in origin, like retardando, slow down, and it's basically a lower IQ. Uh, but that's digressing. And you're avoiding all these things because, as say, what in a political landscape, you're trying to appeal to people. And by appealing to people, your goal is also to not offend people. And that's where the origin of political landscape. Let me put on my glasses here. So if we look it up on Google, first of all, this definition they give us exhibiting or failing to exhibit political correctness. Thank you for nothing. All right, I hate it when they use the word itself to define the word I'm looking up. Jesus. All right, so political correctness from Wikipedia is a term used to describe language, policies, or measures intended to avoid offense or disadvantage to members of particular groups or society. And so that's when it's not no longer an interpersonal social thing. It goes into government and policies, politicians, what they do. And so that's really where it stems from. Don't offend people. Now, of course, there's a politician, a very popular one right now in 2020, who literally says a lot of un-PC things, and our president, if you didn't know. And I believe the idea behind that is there's been a buildup of people that maybe dislike certain parts of PC culture, and so it's very refreshing. I'm using their words, not mine, to see someone that is okay with offending people in order to get to the heart of something. All right. And to be more less of a politician that's always appearing to be likable and appeal to everyone when in fact deep down inside they may not. And so I guess you can think of it as being blunt or being honest, and that's the appeal there. Okay, so I want to show a video. This was back, oh, I forget when it was. Is this 2007? But right, this is one of the first instances where I saw political correctness in, coming through. And this is, political correctness and tying in with cancel culture and the term woke. They're all related basically to try and not offend people because people, if you're a liberal person, the idea is that we're all equal. It's egalitarian. And so, especially for people we would consider, I guess, lesser or um, disabled or somehow hmm, challenged or maybe with deficits, we don't call them out on that. We still consider them equals. And so listen to this.
last night. 7th championship for Pat Summit I-Man. They beat Rutgers by 13 points.
That's some rough girls from Rutgers, man. They got tattoos and
some hardcore hoes.
That's some nappy-headed hoes there. I'm going to tell you that now.
Oh, man.
Man, that's some... Ooh.
All right, so the idea is he's a sports analyst, comedian, and he's commenting about basketball players. I don't know anything about Rutgers. I don't even know where the college is. But you see what's happening, and there was a huge fallout about that. I believe I think he had to quit his job, or the station fired him for making that statement. And that was a consequence of PC culture. And I can see why it's important, because at the heart of it, at the heart of PC culture is that in our history we have been very un-PC, where we have been openly saying these derogatory statements about various people and not facing any consequence, having sexist remarks against, watch Mad Men, when it goes back in time to like the 70s, and people were still getting used to women in the workplace, and there's a lot of sexist language. Or go back to, I guess, anti-Chinese rules, where they had these awful portrayals of Chinese people, and all kind of slurs were used. And so that was a far right idea, where it's okay to make fun of people, it's okay to look down on people, it's okay to just say things about them. And so we're moving now in the opposite direction. Are we at extreme before we face pullback? I don't know, but we're at the opposite end. And so now we're seeing, don't say those things. And if you do, there will be people that will call for your jobs. There will be people that enact violence against you. There will be people that, shame you. People that are gonna post it on their Instagram and try and not have you never to have a job again, as opposed to, say, maybe trying to educate you. Another story, right? And so that's the fallout of PC culture. And we saw it again also in one of the other interesting stories. There's a term, right? If you're not American, there's a term, chink in the armor, meaning that there's a vulnerability. You seem like you're invincible, but there's a vulnerability you have somewhere, right? A chink is like a little crack. And also, chink is a racial slur for Chinese people. Okay, never heard it before in my life except on the news. But they came out with that on ESPN, and there was a big uproar about that. Probably some people got fired as well. But that's PC culture in action. And I would say I'd have to warn everybody that just because we're being PC now, that doesn't mean we're suddenly better people. It just means there's consequences when we're being un-PC. And it, it can still manifest your views, and your weird views about particular groups of people can still manifest itself. So I have this. This is actually recently from just a couple months ago. Joe Biden showed up on Charlemagne's very pro-black guy radio host, and this is.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to.
All right, and listen. So, Vice President over here, he didn't say anything disparaging about black people, but he implied basically, if you don't vote for him, then you're not black. On its surface, it's not necessarily offensive, but what is he trying to say in terms of what is black, and what does it mean to vote for him? And so that's technically PC, but it's problematic in its own way. I want to share that. Okay, now moving on to the term woke. This is one that I heard maybe 5 years ago. Never used it. Some people use it. So Googling it says it's an alert to injustice in society, especially racism. Let's look at Urban Dictionary though, because we want to see what the people might say. And I found this definition to be funny and a little aligned with what my initial thoughts were. The act of being very pretentious about how much you care about a social issue. Yeah. All right. That's kind of what I thought about at first is you want to say I'm woke mainly because you want to show that you're morally superior to other people that aren't woke and that people should aspire to be like you. So there's a bit of, I guess arrogance in that statement. And it's all about this same idea of a little different actually. So the idea with woke PC, I said it mentioned before, it's really don't say these things because there will be consequences for you if you do say them. Being woke means it should mean actually in your heart, in your mind, in your life perspective that you see people, these groups of people, and you see them as human beings. You accept them for who they are, and you understand their issues. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going out there and changing their issues, but you understand that they're human beings. You don't say things like, "Well, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black," right? You see people as these groups of people with their own struggles. And so when it comes to say race, you understand that, okay, your experience as a black person, as a Muslim person, as an Asian person, it may be different than mine. Or to say that, if you're disabled, yeah, people may make fun of you. You understand that part of life, and so you're not insensitive and say all these really callous things, which usually come from a lack of compassion. Not necessarily compassion, but definitely empathy and understanding people's unique scenarios, which may be challenging for them, but not you. And so that's what I see at the heart of woke. And I think generally it is a good thing. It's just that the word itself is so arrogant, and I don't know, high school kids are using it. Um, and I think that that's something that takes experience and understanding the human condition, understanding our tribal nature, as well as understanding topics in the news beyond the headline and beyond you're racist, you're bad, cancel you. All right? That's literally the complete opposite. Because I think being woke also means you're able to maybe see maybe a group that you don't like. All right? Like, say, white supremacists. All right? A lot of people don't like them. Did you know that there's a correlation between white supremacist views and poverty, lack of education, lower income? Are they related? And so all these things is you have to see these people as people, and that includes well poor people who have um, white supremacist ideas. Okay, that was a little much, but let's go into when woke becomes too woke. All right, this is a very interesting news topic that came up recently. This is last month. This title is Customers React to Trader Joe's Controversy Over Racist Product Labels. Let's take a listen.
Trader Joe's has been and will continue to pull some products that some people say are offensive. But many people we talk to say this is going too far. Are you offended by this?
Not at all.
But a petition going around says otherwise. According to SF Gate, nearly 1,000 people have signed an online petition urging the retail giant Trader Joe's to rename brands and logos labeled Trader Ming's, Trader Jose.
By the way, I've had some of Trader Ming's food. It's basically what you would find in Panda Express, but frozen. It tastes nothing like authentic Chinese food. I don't think it's racist at all, but food tastes like crap. That's the problem.
And Trader Giotto's, referencing Chinese, Mexican, and Italian food. So do you find offense to this?
I might not like the colors, but no, absolutely not.
And what about the other products?
Ridiculous. It's getting a little out of hand. And I think people need to focus more on other things.
Trader Joe's says it has been...
All right. And so that's too woke. By the way, one interesting thing about this that not enough people are talking about is that this petition was made by a high school student in San Francisco. And would you care to guess what her ethnic makeup is? If you guessed white, you're right. Yeah. All right. It's this is- this is this is an instant. I'm gonna say it. It's too woke. You are in high school. You might have not had a job yet. You understand things from a very conceptual or ideological perspective without really considering how it is in the real world, in real relationships, or the psychology behind it. And so you're creating this petition and you're saying, let's see if we can search up that petition. Let's see. Hopefully we can find it. Change.org. Okay, so literally the title is Trader Joe's remove racist packaging from your products. Okay, so racist packaging. Okay, I didn't get to 7,500. Thank God. But let's define what racism is. I think if you ask the person, they're not gonna have a good answer for you. And so racism is either Brion's. Yeah, I searched it up. She's a high school student. It's it's when you see an entire race of people, a group, ethnic group, as inferior, or I guess you could use the more I don't use it, but a systemic issue where um, systems in place are designed to keep one group of people down. So, for example, with Chinese folks, there were anti-miscegenation laws. So, what's it? Chinese people couldn't marry. This was when they're immigrating to San Francisco to collect gold or work on the railroads, where they couldn't marry white women or they couldn't own land. And then there was a ban on even them coming to America. And the ones that are already here, they wanted to bring their family or their wives. They couldn't. So that's systemic racism. This is neither, okay? This is basically they're saying if you have an ethnic name on the food packaging, that's racist. And does it apply to either one of those definitions? No. So already logically this makes no sense. But to this high school student, it's not about sense, it's about, reading, she probably read a history book and said, oh my God, look at all these terrible things that have happened to immigrants in the past. Um, it's racist to say something. She probably went to Trader Joe's and saw the Kung Pao chicken and said, triggered. And that's I understand it, but that's too woke. All right. You're deflecting from actual racism, whether it's interpersonal or whether it's systemic. And now you're upset because uh, Kung Pao cauliflower says Trader Ming's or your beer says Trader Jose. And so that's the main issue behind this and being too woke is you can't do it, and then it's deflected from actual issues. And every time we hear about issues, I want to say we should always consider and put weight on the issue based on the person proposing it. In this case, a high school student who's white. Okay, so this does not directly affect her. She's being offended on behalf of I don't know who, based on some ideology that I don't know her liberal parents shared with her, or liberal school system shared with her, and so or her white guilt motivates her. I don't know. And so that's what I believe this is the product of, and we should be, have a grain of salt when we listen to things like this. It makes for a great storyline, doesn't actually make for anything I think worthy of consideration when we think about how to make our society a better place. Okay, so that's being politically correct and being woke. I hope that's very helpful for you, and I also hope where you see where it can go wrong. Mind you, I think it's generally a good thing just because in our history we've just been very rude and just did not consider other people's and what our words, very callous words, may affect them. But we're seeing the opposite end where we're being a little too sensitive and we're seeking problematic issues where it's not really one. Okay, take care.